Corvette.
Okay, we are back. New year, new prez, so much. Alright, but let's get down to it, okay? So we left off in the last couple of videos by talking about cults. But we're gonna switch it up today by talking about a cult. Should we really be doing this again? I mean, can we talk about werewolves or something? No? Okay. So a cult is present here, but we're going to be glossing over it for the most part, because what we're really going to talk about is adaptations. Book-to-film adaptations are so common that most of us don't even realize that that's what we're seeing at first when we discover it. The general rule is that the book is better, even if the movie is great. We live in a world now of comic book adaptations. The MCU reigns supreme right now, but how many of us are ready for the Batman to give them a run for their money, huh? And finally, let's get to the core of what we're talking about today, the hardest adaptation to do, and the genre that gets by far the most hate. Video game adaptations. Are there even any good ones out there? Ugh, that's horrible. Terrible. Ugh. I mean, sure, we've been seeing some success in the box office lately with the new Tomb Raider that just came out, and many people will point to Mortal Kombat as the best that the subgenre has to offer. And overall, you know what, they may be right. But today, let's talk about my personal favorite video game adaptation, even though it fell so short. So let's take yet another of our many trips through the fog-filled streets of Silent Hill. Let's go!
So please don't knock over my heart, 'cause my heart is full of you. Yeah, my heart is full of you. And don't worry about tomorrow, 'cause my heart is full of you. Yeah, my heart is full of you.
Silent Hill was a 2006 film adaptation, sort of the 1999 video game for the PS1. The video game is absolutely iconic, and that is not hyperbole. I would love to give you an accurate account of the units sold at this point, but Konami, the publisher of said franchise,
Konami, you are the worst.
Famously does not release full and accurate numbers. So, we can take an estimation of approximately 6.9 million units sold for the first 4 games of the series as of 2019 and go on with the information that we do have, which is that the first 2 games are by far the best sellers. The 2006 film managed to pull in $100.6 million in the box office against a $50 million budget. It was met with mixed to negative reviews and currently holds approximately a 63% on Rotten Tomatoes. Silent Hill was ambitious as an adaptation. Extremely ambitious. The original game was a psychological horror game that relied on tension, atmosphere, and characterization to be effective. So what happened? What went quote-unquote wrong when translating it? Lots of people make the argument that it all came down to the transition to a visual, non-interactive medium, and that can be fair, seeing as though many games, Silent Hill being one of them, base their horror on immersion and interactivity. But I think that there might be just a little bit more to it than that. Aesthetics, perhaps. That's another argument that comes up frequently, so let's look at the fog in Silent Hill for this. Again, not to overuse a word here, but Silent Hill was ambitious. In the original game in 1999, the graphics that were used pushed the original PlayStation console to its limit and thus ended up with a fair amount of lag and glitches when you moved Harry Mason throughout the town. So, a nice thick fog was implemented to, sure, give it some more ambiance and mystery, as well as make the monsters you encounter pop out of nowhere while shouting a bloogie woogie woo, but also to hide large sections of the map so that the system didn't have to process it in real time, thus lowering the lag and making the game run far more smoothly. We had a fog in the film too, sure, but with a nice snowy ambiance to get us there. get us to that cold, isolated, frightened feel, but wait, no. The snow in this film was... Okay, alright. Not the worst thing in the world here. They gave an in-film original reason for this aesthetic. And in the film's case, the fog is basically steam from the coal fires burning beneath the town, and the snow that's coming down is, well, it's actually ashes raining down from the sky. Appropriate for the story that they're giving us, and I guess even pseudo-apocalyptic. Alright, so the nature of the fog was changed, and with it, some of Silent Hill's lore. I think we're starting to get somewhere. I think the problem might be able to be boiled down to the word changes. What else did they change? I'm not going to bury the lead here. Actually, a whole hell of a lot. Which is kind of upsetting considering the director, Christopher Gans, is supposedly a fan of the video game series. In the game, you play as Harry Mason. Harry and his daughter Cheryl get into a car crash outside of the town of Silent Hill while swerving to avoid a little girl in the road. So far, we're close here with the adaptation, but also kinda not really, but alright, we'll come back to this. We'll come back. Throughout the game, Harry traverses the frightening, unsettling town of Silent Hill searching for his daughter and learns about the town's secret and terrifying past, and ultimately, the origin of his adopted daughter, Cheryl. Oh yeah, she's adopted, by the way. See, the town has a cult who is trying to birth their deity into corporeal form by using a ritual of immolation to bring it forth. Or in layman's terms, this cult wanted to bring a demon god into the world and decided to set a little girl on fire to do it. The little girl chosen was the cult leader's daughter, Alessa, who resisted the ritual and thus her soul fractured, creating two versions of herself. The half of goodness, who was ultimately adopted by Harry and his wife, and the darker version, which remained in Silent Hill. The cult's goal was to rejoin the two halves, finish the ritual, and bring the demon forth into the world. And they almost succeeded, actually. You know what? Depending on the endings, they actually do succeed, and then you blast this newborn demon right back to hell. See, the video game is ultimately about a father traveling through hell to find and rescue his little girl, fighting demons, cultists, and the physical manifestations of his daughter's greatest fears in order to do so. That's what the monsters and bosses are. Alessa was terrified of a rumbling sound in the school's basement and thought that it was a giant lizard monster. Thus, when you're in the school, you fight a giant lizard monster. She was horribly bullied by the other children, hence the twisted demon children. By the way, bullying bad. See? Bullying creates demon monsters spawned from the hellish unconscious of a little girl, so bullying bad. There are several endings that you can achieve in this game, but the canonical ending is when you slay the demon, your daughter is reborn as a complete whole, both good and evil combined, like all of us, and you escape Silent Hill, saving your daughter in the process. The movie does things a little bit differently. The film scraps Harry for Rose, and we're already going to have to pause here. See, it's very rare when you have a film with a powerful father-daughter dynamic. Father-son, that happens a lot. Mother-daughter, even father-dog, but father-daughter, it doesn't not happen, but it's really rare, and frankly, it's something that I wish we would see a lot more in film. It would have been nice to see that explored on the big screen in Silent Hill, especially with Sean Bean, but okay, that's fine. We got Rose, I can live with that, and with her, we get to explore the theme of mother being God on the lips of a child.
Mother is God in the eyes of a child.
I like it. We can come back from giving us a new protagonist. I'm not against it. The plot for this film gives us Sharon instead of Cheryl, but Alessa's still the same. So, okay. So Rose takes Sharon to Silent Hill because she keeps sleepwalking and getting night terrors and screaming out. So that's why they go. Okay then. The car crash remains the same from the game to the film, just like Cheryl disappearing, and Rose is tasked with finding and rescuing her. Then we have the cult. The cult is stripped away, basically, and replaced with religious fanatics who are essentially just modern-day witch burners. See, it's like if the Salem witch trials were transplanted to the 21st century. It's kind of like what that would be like. Christopher Gans did his best to streamline the story for a non-initiated audience, and somehow, in his simplification process, he made it more convoluted. The cult is gone, as is the demonology. The mental projections of Alessa's fears are nearly gone and replaced mostly with some of the most iconic monsters in the franchise. The faceless nurses, and of course, this big guy. This film is worth it just to see him. But that's kind of my point though. The nurses and Pyramid Head are from Silent Hill 2, where they make thematic sense. There's a reason for their existence. The monsters in the first 3 games of the series actually were all metaphorical. They existed to represent something to the person being drawn to Silent Hill, something that character and ultimately the player must face and overcome in order to proceed. That isn't the case here. The closest thing the film gets is the janitor who molested Alessa turning into a bound, twisted, crawling creature that poisons everything he touches. And that's where my ire flips back the other way. Gans had to have understood what he was doing in order to create this, because this is Silent Hill. But this creature was sacrificed to the altar of fan service to give us this Mac Daddy. Still awesome, by the way. Still loving it. The overarching lore of the film is that Alessa was burned by the cult but survived, and in her rage, pain, and wishes for vengeance, brought forth a demon who plunged the rest of the town into Alessa's nightmares. Into a world of vengeance. And then this ending. I don't even completely know what happened here. I think the implication is that the dark version of Alessa will never let Rose go now that she has a true mother. They're still in this hellscape and will never return. See, when you look at the plots side by side, Christopher Gans did his best to try to streamline the story for a non-initiated audience by getting rid of rituals and the soul splitting due to that ritual and demonology, but in his attempt to streamline that story for the non-initiated audience, he somehow made it more convoluted and confusing and kind of weird. The film comes close with its aesthetic, it comes close with the feel of it, it comes close with the imagery, it knocks it out of the park with the score, which was remixed from the original series by original composer Akira Yamaoka. The film, it comes so close, but ultimately it buckles under the weight of its own ambition. The agency that Harry had is gone. The symbolisms and allusions to alchemy, they're gone. Like I said, Gans tried to simplify the story and inadvertently made it far more convoluted and complex than it ever needed to be. Hell, the game has a soul literally being split in 2, but I could follow that easier than I could follow this film. Okay, opinion time. I like this movie. I really do. I like it in spite of itself almost, knowing full well where I believe it went wrong. As I said way back at the beginning, Mortal Kombat is regarded by many as the best video game adaptation to date, and they may be right. Although the new Mortal Kombat might give it a run for its money, but that's yet to be seen. But context is king here. Mortal Kombat had a nearly non-existent story at the time, and that lent itself perfectly to a filmmaker's ambitions to craft and produce a narrative that builds on those bare bones. Silent Hill was an extremely dense, extremely powerful, extremely beloved story, chock full of narrative and symbolism already, and I think that's where it fell short. I have no problem with the religious fanatic angle. I even got behind Rose. It had the elements to make itself something completely new and possibly great, but where the film went wrong, well, it can be boiled down to 2 things. 1, not being confident in its own story. The film relies too much on nostalgia and visual recognition instead of creating and crafting its own thing. Be yourself or adapt what you had. Don't straddle the bar. By not coming down hard on its own story, it created a convoluted mess that confuses and perplexes. This is what happens when you try to do too many things at once. Gans tried to give us an adaptation for the game while simultaneously telling a completely different story. He didn't choose, and the film suffered for it. What it succeeds at, it hits out of the park, but the lack of confidence shows. And I think that the confidence comes from the fundamental misunderstanding of what Silent Hill is. Which brings me to the second point. Silent Hill itself. And by that, I mean the town of Silent Hill itself. The most important and ultimately terrifying character in Silent Hill is the town. It's a dark, lonely, desolate town where your worst and most personal demons and fears are brought to life. Sometimes it's your own. Sometimes your loved ones, like the case of Alessa. In the game, Silent Hill is ultimately a character. It's alive, always changing, the way it switches between the regular world and the dark world. The film treats the town as almost just a setting. You go to this place because reasons. You end up here because reasons. It's dirty, but not disturbing. It's rusty, but it lacks the organic feeling. But more than anything, it's what Silent Hill represents. Silent Hill, depending on your religion, is hell. A hell of your own creation. Or it's purgatory, a place where you are sent to cleanse yourself of your sins before your final judgment. Silent Hill is the Black Lodge. It's the further. In the film, it's just a setting, which is upsetting. Look, I really do like this film, and I will defend Silent Hill for no other reason than its ambition. It got so damn close. It ultimately missed, but God, it got close. And I do and always will recommend it to anybody, if for no other reason than its popcorn munching watchability. Oh, we're going to be talking a lot more about Silent Hill. I mean, a lot more, but I'll save that for the new series that we put out, Life with a Joystick. So I'm going to leave off with this. In regards to film, not just Silent Hill, but film in general, appreciate ambition. Even when a film is bad, or more importantly, especially when a film is bad, appreciate ambition. Films are miracles. With all of the people working on it, egos, imaginations, moving pieces, lighting, sound, producers, directors, actors, with all of these moving pieces, it is astounding sometimes that we have films at all. Silent Hill may not be perfect, but that's part of its beauty to me. This film swung for the fences, and it came so close to making it. But ambition doesn't always equate to genius. The game was genius. The ideas that Christopher Gans tried to give us for a new story actually had a lot of genius. But you have to choose. And that's where the film went wrong. And the beauty of Hollywood is that you can always come back. Maybe the next film will get there. Nope, not with that one, no!